Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca. I'm an intimacy behavioral therapist. Happy to be back sharing some of my thoughts and insights. And if you are just new to this channel and this is the first video, welcome. I'm going to be sharing some of my thoughts and insights that have to do with some articles that I've read over the past year or so. And these in particular have to do with younger people, youth, young men, and sexuality. And they resonate with me because I have patients that have experienced some of the challenges and are a part of the sort of cultural shifting landscape in terms of what is sexuality and how it's defined. Um, and so I'm going to be sharing that. And as I share the articles, I will put them in, I'll put the links in with in with the video itself. So, yeah, so, and I'm also, would just mention that if you are new to the channel, you may want to go back and look at my earlier article or my earlier videos that share about who I am, what my work is, what my focus is, why I do what I do, what my therapy process is. That just would be maybe useful for you to get a context as to why I'm sharing the way I am today. So, the first one is Sex and Teens. The article is about that. And they talk about how there's been this development of new terms to describe sexual activity among the youth when there had been some surveys taken, interviews taken I think this was last year. Um, and one of the terms, they're talking about how youth are describing sexuality, how it's evolving and changing. And so for kids, they're saying that like some of them are calling relationships they get into situationships, which are, basically what we would call relationships without any strings attached or any kind of commitment. There's also something called sneaky links, which is, hooking up with somebody but not telling your closest friends about it. So these new terms are kind of coming out. And also, what is the actual definition of sex? So youth are no longer inclined, it seems, to limit it, describing it as sexual intercourse. It seems that many are not feeling the need to experiment with sexual intercourse, even into their young adulthood. And in fact, they're feeling that the sexual experiences they have, oral sex or manual release, these different things are ways that they're describing their sexual contact. And I found that interesting. And there also seems to be, yeah, well, we know that there's this evolving kind of gender fluidity going on. So that's also, of course, playing a part, but I'm not really focusing on that as much. There's also, so these are, I'm just going to share some of the things that seem to be contributing to what I see as a moving away from developing the skills to be intimate. So across generations, particularly this younger generation, that as there's less face time, there's more screen time, so there's less opportunity, right, to develop these skills. So, are required actually, cannot be substituted in order to create intimate bonds. So, one contributing factor, this article says, is helicopter parenting, something that's a little bit newer in that kids have, because they're online and they have their parents, who are watching and are using, they can't explore in the same way because they're being monitored basically online, their activities online and offline, but people are so much online. Um, And then another kind of contributing factor to the sort of changing landscape or shifting landscape with sexuality and youth is, of course, this is for all generations, but particularly on the impressionable youth, is porn's influence. Pornography cannot be overstated in terms of its effect on youth being able to use it as a very convenient substitute for intimacy, or what they think that might be, since they've in many cases have no idea that it could be something other than their experience with pornography, and relying on it. And it, of course, moves them away from developing the capacity to create human connection. And then we've got, we're just coming out of COVID, right? So for youth that were in really important years of development, social development, in all areas of development, actually, of their life, that got put on pause, stopped, created many conditions, as we know, of depression, isolation. We are social creatures. We need to connect, and if this happened during some very formative years, so for teens and early 20s, of course, younger than that as well. But I'm speaking about when most people kind of come into sexual maturity or beginning to explore. And coming out of COVID, then there's also the fears that came, and paranoia around getting close to another person because of fear of illness, and a lot of fear mongering going on there. And, it's really stopped like the natural progression of physical exploration when you're with another person. And it's so critical that people have an opportunity to explore another person's body. I sometimes will say to patients who have little experience, in the realm of sexual activity and intimacy, that like making out, something that we did, just where you're just kissing and touching and exploring. The benefit of that is really being able to um, find out about what happens in your body, the sensations, and experience, explore, observe, and that with another person without a goal in mind, without necessarily the pressure to go all the way to sex or intercourse. So I feel like that's a very important part for many people, that is often missed, and particularly now is being missed even more because of this move to everything online, or on screens. And then I think, let's see, yeah, of course, we've got always the issue of what is sex education. That's getting super complicated. It never was great in this country or anywhere in the world, frankly. I mean, there's been some little pieces here and there where it was, decent, but mostly like in Norway, Switzerland, those countries. Here, not so much in America, for a lot of reasons we know, right? Victorian shame, all of the reasons, why, uh, great fear about teaching sexuality, and now it's become more complicated with, some of the newer ideas that we have around gender and uh, different kinds of ideologies, which I'm not going to go into, but do have an effect. Um, and then, um, I think, it's. Hmm. So I'm just going to share one last thing. I think, yeah, one last thing about this particular article, and then, I've got a couple other articles because I want to keep these videos short. Um, but one other thing was really interesting in my own personal upbringing that was really helpful, to my development of social skills, and which would lead to the ability to have the courage to, um, go outside of my comfort zone and learn how to be intimate. Not necessarily sexual, but yes, eventually sexual with another person. And there was a youth group that I was actually a part of called the Forum, and it was comprised of kids from all across that metropolitan area that I grew up in. And we would meet, once every 2 weeks. This was like, hmm, during the school year, from ages like 15 to 17, 18. And we had facilitators, and we would explore. We would do trust exercises. We would, kind of what I guess today you would look at as like some sort of psychological, you know, exploration, like in terms of our learning about our psyches and how we were developing. But it was really about trust building, making friends, communicating, um, how to navigate complex emotions, how to, um, how to interact on a more personal level, with your peers, and in the freedom, right, without parents, um, around. help really help me individuate, help me to really grow up and learn how to be with other people. And I think again that's missing since very little of this seems to happen in person. And I think one of the main things I'm going to always be saying is that no matter how, and of course, AI and porn and online is very valuable and important for many, many things. And, and like even porn, yes, there's some value, and all of this is here to stay, and it's all, I'm not necessarily critiquing it in and of itself. That said, there are consequences to not developing the skill to, which takes courage. I'll say this over and over again, to be able to communicate with another person. And from where I stand, it starts with really having a genuine connection and deepening understanding of what's happening in your own mind and body and spirit. And that, that's just, to me, that's a fact and integral to developing intimacy skills. So I'm going to leave it here on this particular about sex and teens and some of the contributing factors to um, the early or lack of early development, right, of kind of youthful exploration and understanding of oneself. So thank you very much for listening, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.